personal stories are your chance to connect with people. Now, how many of you like understand some facts? You know science, things about climate change. Okay, you know disasters that have happened. You know, this or that. You have all of that, and sometimes when you go out and you share that with somebody, or you see it being shared with somebody, you're like, oh my gosh, how could it possibly not be convincing? And then somebody at the other end just says this thing, and you're like, ah, and your face melts off a little bit, and you don't know what to do. And then you're left powerless. Sometimes that happens. It has happened for me, where I'm left and I just don't know what to say after a while. Personal stories are not that tact. There's something completely different. It's actually where you leverage your being a human and their being a human to connect with each other. And it's a way for you to actually make a connection that is undeniable and is also like really accepted by the other person. It doesn't make them wrong. It doesn't make you right, but just simply expresses what you care about and what's important to you. And it maybe lights up something inside of them about what they care about, what's important to them. That's what a personal story can do. And that's why it's so critical and important in your conversation. Maybe it's the most critical thing in a lot of your conversation. We all know the science, and that sometimes really doesn't make a difference. So, that's what we're going to do right here at the beginning. I find that, what do I want to say now? I want to share my personal story. The thing about personal stories is they're a little risky. Like right before you're about to say it, you're like, maybe there's something else I can do right now, but not share my personal story. For me, I first saw The Inconvenient Truth movie by, I don't know, well, Al Gore was like the name on it. It was probably made by a lot of people, around 8 years ago. And it really struck me for something. And from that day forth, I really had climate change was something really important to me. I saw it, I stopped eating, I changed what I ate, I got a bike, you know, like I changed a lot about my life. But it really came home when I was visiting my home in Colorado about 3 years ago. And every time when I go home to Colorado, I get off the plane, I go to Fort Collins, and a few days later we drive up to this cabin in the mountains. It is wonderful. I get to be with my family for like a few days right at Christmas. And this time as we were driving up, I'm with my mom, and we turn a corner and we just see a whole mountain and it's brown. And I turn to my mom and say, like, what's going on with the trees, Mom? She says, oh, they're all dying. I mean, the beetles were coming through and just killing them. And I looked up and I just saw this place, my home, turning brown. It's gotten hotter. The beetles now have multiple breeding seasons. They're killing the trees. The trees then burn down, and I watch it on the news. And then the floods come and they wash it all away. And sometimes you think that your home will never change, and then you come home and it really has. And that's why I moved to make a difference on climate change. It's because I know it's going to do that everywhere. And that's what I'm inviting you to share here. There's something that has to be important to you. And you know what that is. And to have it live, it needs to be shared with somebody. So what I'm going to do now, and we'll come back together and we'll actually work with your personal stories to have you be effective with it, is you're going to turn with your group of 3 people, and I want you each to take a moment and just share why it's important to you. Some tips about this is pick a moment. There was a moment in your life that it became important to you. I saw my homeland die, and that was when it was important to me. And there was a moment for you somewhere, and I don't know where it was, but it was. So go ahead, and I'm going to give you about 3, 4, 5 minutes with your group to share what was the moment that happened that had to be important to you. Okay? So first off, before we even split up, let's just make sure you have groups. And Wei Tai, do you have?
Yeah, I was going to say, when you pair off with 3 people each, pair off with people you don't know, right? So you might be sitting with people you know, but you got to try to pair off with people you don't know so that you'll make it more fun.
So raise your hand if you do not have a group of 3 people that you're with. I don't have a group of 3 people. All right, if you're raising your hand, look around for other people that are raising their hand. Clap once. You can hear my voice clap twice. You can hear my voice clap 3 times. Great. orient your chairs towards the front now. So I want to hear from a few of you. Does anyone have anything they want to share? Like this, your 1 minute place it was. Okay, what is your moment? Peter.
I'm trying to figure. I want to share an observation about what you did when you started this, because there was a moment where
You stand up.
I am Peter Joseph, 2007 training. You showed emotion. You choked. That was the most powerful part of what you did. And I always, in my talks, with pictures of my little granddaughters at the age of 2. And I usually wind up getting a little emotional about it, and an explanation of why I'm doing this work.
Yeah.
And that really works. That breaks down a lot of barriers in existence.
Yeah.
So thank you for that example.
Anyone else? What was your moment? From this side of the room? I'm going to start taking points from either side of the room, so this side of the room is your chance. Go ahead. Please stand up.
Oh, do I have to?
Well, you're not really talking to me, we're really talking to everybody here.
Basically, I don't have a lot of family, but I have a little brother who's 21 years younger than me, and I just want to make this place a little better than what I got here for.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can imagine, yeah?
Well, I copy-pasted everything. I said, I remember when I was trying to write up my thing, and I was going into my education and how I learned all this stuff and graduate school, but a personal story is I'm passionate about skiing. I think it's the best thing in the world. And when I was 10, they gave me some rudimentary skis, and I wouldn't let anybody else play with these skis, my whole family. So the last 20 years, I just skied a lot. And the last few years in Tahoe has just been so depressing. We just want to cry. I work for the ski bus, and we go up. People say, usually we start testing out food when we see snow, but that means we're almost there. But like now, it's like, not it's like 0% of our snowpack. 0%, 5% of our snowpack. And now it's like, this is real, this is here. And it's happening faster.
You know, you were about to say there, people say, and then you said something else, but what do people say?
Oh, I mean, well, we had a very similar group practice thing at the breakout sessions, and we had just do something, how's it personal to us? And like, we were all, the guy I partnered up with, we just went up about our education, just naming facts, like I said, it was what really struck me, what really pivoted me, that it's man-made and not natural, is when I learned about the stratosphere. I look up in the sky and I've seen more of these clouds, they're called interstellar clouds, are you familiar with them? They're stratosphere clouds that are now being connected with climate change.
Yeah.
And I've seen more and more, they're beautiful, but they're really weird clouds.
This is really good. Okay, so, what's your name?
Linda.
Linda. Thank you, Linda. You notice something about what Linda was saying there. When you started, you talked about when I was a kid, I got skis, and I loved it. It was so good. And now I go up on the ski bus, and we get there, and there's just disappointment. And then I said something, and then you said more like science-related things. Which one of those, of what Linda was saying, really resonated with you? Like, had you want to like do something, take action? The first one? Yeah, yeah. It was, I'm not gonna say, I don't know why. I don't know if it's because it's more comfortable or because you know, whatever. But we go to science. We go to saying like facts or like, yeah, I saw these things. The understanding that we have. We go there, and it doesn't call it out of somebody the same way that what happened when you were 10 and grow up and the excitement there, and then the of now. Like it's just people get it. So that's what we're gonna do right now with a personal story. Do you have?
Well, I feel like she was telling us. I mean, I agree with you. That was more compelling. But when she started to say that she's looking at even the sky is different. So I think that the more she says that in an emotional way,
Mm-hmm.
it's telling people, oh, you know, they're finding different kinds of clouds. But the idea that even the actual, that things look different now, that are, you know, that the sky looks different. I mean, that there are different kinds of clouds, like, to me, that actually is very compelling. I mean,
and you can tell, like, as you're sharing, as we get into like the color of the sky, what did you start thinking of? Did you start imagining a sky and the skies you've seen recently? Now, we all haven't seen the same skies, but we all have the experience of noticing the skies a different color. And we start to see that and feel it. So what was present there is you were describing an actual vivid experience, like a sensory experience, my eyes. It wasn't a science or an object, a vague object. There's a real power in personal stories and specificity. Like the color of the sky used to be so blue, and now I look up and this, or and then that. So that's another aspect that you can include when you're actually sharing your personal story, like about your brother. Yeah, if there's moments with your brother when you first, like, this topic came up with him, and the things that were said, the things you heard, that's another sense. The things you saw, the thing that was actually in front of you, those will really connect with people. It really will, I promise you. It's something that for you to go out and experiment with and discover for yourself, but my tip is that if you say things that really connect with the senses that we can immediately take in, those really connect with people when it comes to your personal story. The smell, the sights, the things you hear, the words that were said. Yeah? And could you stand up just so get this discussion with everybody?
Hi. I got cochlear implants about a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
And I've always worked with environmental issues through my artwork and just been aware of it. I remember the sky in New York when we lived there. It was all orange, shocking, and that contrast to where I grew up in the Midwest struck me. So I've been aware of it for a long time. But I think when I got the cochlear, I had gradually lost my hearing and then eventually qualified with cochlear implant. So after the second one, I started doing, I didn't want to do the traditional kind of listening to the boring stuff online. So I by just chance, picked up my own claims. This changes everything. Capitalism versus environment. And so that was what, hearing that, and then I listened to it 3 times because it takes, the rehabilitation takes time. And so then after that, I started listening to more and more folks. So that was the catalyst that pushed me, even though I knew before and had seen, now I could actually hear.
Good. Now, can I ask you a question about it? So what she shared was actually the moment that really was authentically for her, where you started to, like, this became important to you.
And I could communicate at that point.
Yeah.
Before that, I could communicate to my artwork, could do
Totally.
images, but not in a.
The moment that this became important to you isn't the moment that you became very fluent at it. It's just the moment it became important to you. It was a human moment. You listened to it 3 times, and when you said that, I imagined somebody sitting there trying to recover.
Too.
Listening to reading, like doing it 3 times.
Right.
What was going through your head? What were the dialogue of thoughts in your head while
While
you
I was
were
listening to it.
Mhm.
Well, you can know something's serious, and you can deny it, because like I got really good at denying my hearing loss, so I'm pretty much an expert at that.
Now, just tell me, what were you saying to yourself in your head while you were listening to it? It might have sounded something like, oh my gosh.
Well, it's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that we've gotten ourselves in this position. You know, we're supposed to be really smart, and here we are. You know?
Yeah.
It's just,
We're supposed to be really smart, and here we are. Can you kind of hear yourself in that? Yeah. That's where you can connect with somebody. It's where okay, thank you very much. Good. Okay. You in the back? Yeah, please.
I live part-time in Alpine County, so I can certainly understand your perspective about high altitude and the changes. But long before that, I left the intellectual component behind with the science and the facts when I had some opportunities to be with indigenous peoples.
Mm-hmm.
And the turning point, the pivot point for me was at the Brower Center when there was a film festival produced, and all the films were produced by young people from Athabasca. And since that time, I've marched with the Cowboy Indian Alliance, rode on the several Sioux leaders from Nebraska, and have marched in some of the marches in the Richmond area with refinery walks. We're buffered in so many ways. And when you watch a warrior cry and hear hip-hop music written by a young Blackfoot Sioux tribal member talking about what's actually happening to their people, that puts anything about hip-hop from the inner city to shame.
Was that the moment that it happened to you?
Every one of those moments drives the knife a little bit deeper. So pick
What's
one.
your name?
Maureen.
Maureen.
Maureen. And
Can I ask you a question about it, which might really make this really powerful? Because it's really good. What Maureen was just talking about is the things you've done, and you talked about a poem that a Black Sioux Indian
I had,
man?
no. It was a young man from the Blackfoot
A young man.
Reservation in the Dakotas. These are, what resonates is that they're very personal experiences of people suffering from climate injustice now today. It's not anything I pick up in the paper.
Yeah.
These are people I know and I'm developing a relationship with.
Can I ask you a question about it?
Yes.
Tell us one of them. Tell us one of those personal experiences.
Riding on the train with a Blackfoot Sioux tribal member, talking about what had happened to the land that his people live on, and the oral tradition of what it once was. And we're talking about climate. I'm not discussing violence perpetrated upon them. I'm talking about actual changes in our climate.
Yeah.
And hearing someone say that we told you and we've watched this for generations and you failed to see.
What was
And
happening?
seeing a grown man
You were on a train?
the People's Climate Train to the New York City March a year ago, and seeing a grown man weep, and then having him tell me, you know, they had to be very careful about who they selected to go on this train trip with the white people. He says, because it's so very difficult for us to talk to them, and I'm one of the few that our tribe feels that can relate to you. And it caused me to see myself and us in a very different light. And when you spend hours over several meals on a train traveling cross country hearing that, you can't escape that. It's not something that I watch on the web. It's hearing the power of someone's own story and knowing that they're actually suffering because of it now.
Okay. Can I ask the group something about what you were saying? Great. So what, from what Maureen was sharing, which parts really stuck out to you? Like they actually connected with you?
A single example
What was it?
of the guy weeping.
The guy weeping on the train. Okay, what else?
I would like to know why he was weeping, why would kind of be, and like white people, but I was really getting interested.
So you were connected to that moment.
I want to hear more
Good.
about it.
What other moments did you connect to? To that moment?
We've been telling you a long time.
Right.
Good. Now what I'll point out about that is that's the words he was saying. We've been telling you for a long time this. Good. What else? Good. So, yeah? Justice. Good. Okay, this is perfect. This is so perfect. The things that stand out are the things that were said, the things that were being seen, maybe what was happening outside of the train. The fact that you were on a train, I can see myself sitting on a train with somebody, moving across the country, seeing this desolate landscape. And there's one other key component that really strikes home with your personal story. It's not something visual or sensory. It's actually the concept that connects with anybody. In this case, justice. We can all get justice. We all know that justice is something that we value. Deep down, pretty much everybody you meet will say that they value justice.
Right and wrong.
Please repeat that. I didn't hear what you said.
You can break it down to right and wrong, moral issue. I would say if just justice is important, it's something that everybody be like, yep, and this is the perfect picture of that. And when a story goes from a really visual, sensory, the dialogue, and then hits also a theme of humanity that's really shared by all of us, that's when somebody will like see you and kind of take on your story and be able to like open up to hear a conversation about climate change, everything else we're going to talk about tonight. For me, my story, the theme, I've shared that with people before, and somebody actually once gave me a really good tip because it's, you know, it was vulnerable for me to share, and she was like, "Thank you for sharing that. It's really like touching that you'd open up that way. Can I give you some coaching about it?" I said, "Yes." It took me a minute. She said, "It's not clear what about what you're sharing really connects with anybody? Like with the anybody out there. And so one thing I'm sure to talk about whenever I share about Colorado and what's important to me is the importance of home. That we all have a home, and that we think it's never going to change. And then we come home and it does. I mean, and that really gets me too, by the way. For you, sharing that moment and sharing what it is that connects with anybody. It could sound something like, justice is something that I think we all connect with, and it just really got ripped from me in that moment that happened. And that's why I'm out to make a difference on climate change and have justice in the world. Something like that. Okay? That was really great. Thank you. So we're going to take the next probably 8 minutes, so twice the amount of time with your group. You're going to go back with your group, and this time I want you to share your personal story, and maybe you start with like, okay guys, can you give me some coaching? I talked about it before, but can you help me identify what's the scene? What does it look like? What is it like? What was being said? Can you help me identify that? And maybe what's the theme that really connects? Is it you think your home is never going to change, and then it does? Like we all think that. Justice is really important to us, or whatever it is. There's many different ways to go about to do this, but that's what we're doing right now. Okay. Okay. You up for it?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So go ahead and be with your group, and go ahead and share, ask them for coaching, and say your personal story. Thank you. All right. So, I hope that left you with something. I'd like for maybe 2 or 3 people just to share what you got out of this session, like what you're going to take away from this in how you share and have conversations around this topic. So just like really short, what you got. Paige.
I've been thinking how helpful it would be to have photos of our personal stories. So we're talking about faces. She was talking about a person, like if you had a photo of the man or the train, or I had a photo of the vacation house where my family goes and the lake and the snow not being there. Like that would be really powerful.
Yeah.
Even if you're in a group, even on your phone, but if you're in a slideshow, that would be your first slide.
Yeah. 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 So it could be something you should. It could be, and it could be also just something that brings you back there. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm changing my personal story. To be more, I realize that there's what's true for me, and there's a lot of things that are true for me, but what was compelling about these examples I heard is having this really evocative setting, this really colorful setting. It's like super important, and I've got this, so I'm gonna rewrite it, and I'll come back next month.
We'll go here and then here.
Yeah, I would echo that. Our group, we're having a really hard time identifying the actual moment, but we all recognize that having an actual moment is really important. And so, kind of like what Ryan said, we've agreed that we're just going to make a moment. And we have all of these experiences that together, they got us to where we were. It's just a matter of crafting the beautiful story. And so I think, for me at least, the things that we're taking away from this are tips on how to tell your story so well, the senses and the emotions and how do you connect it, because I don't think for us it's just one exact moment.
Yeah. And one thing I'd say about that, it's like there's likely many moments that have resonated with you as you like walk through this life and you see something, you're like, oh my gosh, this snow is melting again. Like you can have a story, a vivid story can be told about just about any moment that really touches you, if it authentically gets you. Yeah. It doesn't need to be like the one, you know. Yeah.
It's funny because I was coming in on BART and I was noodling because I still have the worksheet from Miami.
Yeah.
Do your personal story, and it's like this and then this and this, and I feel like I was tuning it from even the event. But tonight made me realize it needs to be personal, and I was like really personal, and like just going down into the, and of course it's obvious personal story, but that's the big thing I got out of this.
Great. Thank you guys. We're going to move on to the next section.
There was another hand.
All right.
Just one other quick observation, which is, I think what we're all saying also is that the audience matters. You got to think about who you're talking to, your
All right. Thank you very much for being here, and thank you very much for taking part. That was great for me, and I hope it was great for you. So, what we have now, on a completely different note, you can breathe in, breathe out. You can change gears altogether, and weights out.